Pop-O-Holics, the show about hot takes, hot tasty pancakes, where get ready for this movie. Yeah, get out of the way. Man, I'm making this week all eat, love, and pray. If this is your first time to the show, my name is Christian. I'm the host of this wild thing we call a podcast. And I'm joined, as always, by my two favorite Comanche fellas. They're not Comanche.
Definitely not. Chris Conkling.
And Brian Cowpie Dupree.
Yeah, great. I love jokes that are really just for me and Chris. That's great. Welcome to Pop-O-Holics. We only do inside jokes. We exclude everyone watching. No, that's not what it is. We're a pop culture podcast, and if you're on the tube, welcome. So you can see our beautiful faces and see that we are clearly not native indigenous people. But man, do we love stories about them, and we got a great one we're going to be talking about. Before we get to that, gentlemen, this is our Predator month, all in service of this movie that we'll be talking about, which I'm not going to say the name of, even though it's the title of this YouTube video on the thumbnail and the title of the episode on the pod. But it's been revealed already. It is not a ghost. It is a Predator. Very nice. Yes. Love that sound cue. Still need to figure out what the hell that is audibly. I don't know how they made that. If you know, please let us know in the comments. And by letting us know in the comments, you'd be entered in to win the original Predator on digital in 4K. If you subscribe to the pod and comment on this video and any of the weekly uploads this month, you will be entered to win that sweet, sweet digital code. Comment on more than one video, and geez Louise, you're going to be entered multiple times.
It's that easy.
Potentially quintupling your odds of winning and surviving. But we're talking all things Predator. Again, this is a main topic episode on the Pop-O-Holics where we do things a bit different. We take a theme all around Predator this month. So we covered AVP last week. We're going to be covering the original Predator, Predator 2, and Predators. Very exciting stuff. And gentlemen.
Yes.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about those on the main topic episodes, but we also have the weekly upload, which is where you can find weekly updates on all things pop culture. We talk about news, things coming out to streaming, what we've been consuming, and do our community feedback, where you can email us at popaholicscast@gmail.com and let us know what you think of the show, any comments, concerns, reviews that you have, thoughts you have on the show. We'll read them aloud in that section so you can get on the show yourself, get your name in those big lights, and also rate us 5 stars on all those platforms. Again, writing that review gets your name in the lights, so get up in there. But we're talking Predator. Let's focus here. And before we get to our review, Chris, you were absent.
I was.
On the Alien vs. Predator AVP rewatch we had. Nostalgic walk down memory lane. But you yourself,
great episode, by the way.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're asking the question, what makes a great Predator film this month? And we'll save it until after Prey, because I want to get all our thoughts out. But we have to start with your history with the Predator franchise.
My history with the Predator franchise starts later in life. The first Predator film I ever saw was actually Predators in 2009. And it wasn't until seeing that movie that I went out and bought a Blu-ray box set of the first Predator and Predator 2. So I didn't see the first Predator until 2009, pretty late when I was in college. But, Christian, you are definitely the Predator super fan of the three of us. But I'm finding that the more I dig into the Predator films for this month, the more your passion becomes contagious. And I'm starting to align with you, because I didn't think that I was going to really enjoy this month very much. And we'll talk about the first Predator movie next week. But I have to say, it's been a really great ride so far, and I'm excited to talk about the movie we're going to be talking about today.
A little spoiler, not spoiler. Chris has indulged himself in other movies aside from what we've been covering. So he's getting very much in
as has Christian.
I know. I'm the only one that's slacking here. Watch documentaries too. I am planning on watching that documentary that you guys brought up. But Chris, this makes me happy because I know you were a little bit worried about this month.
Yeah. It's an easy sign to know how much I'm enjoying something if I'm scouring the internet for hot toys of that particular creature. And let's just say I've been frantically looking for Predator hot toys online the last couple days.
Yeah.
The design is just so iconic. It's some of Stan Winston's best work. It's great. Classic.
Yeah, we're coming on very hot, very excited. I'm glad that my passion for Predator has reached you, Chris. Maybe I'm sure the Predator Hunting Ground servers are alive and well, which is what reignited my love of the character a couple years ago. And maybe we should jump in and do a podcast plays there. A Let's Play.
That might be fun.
It could be very fun. I think it switched to free to play. We'll have to look into that.
Then even better.
Yeah, exactly. Brian and I shared our thoughts on our history. I'm the Predator fanboy. Brian is Predator curious. But I think we're all very excited today to talk about the main topic, which is the new movie by Dan Trachtenberg, Prey.
Why do you want to hunt?
Because you all think that I can't. I saw a sign in the sky. I'm ready.
Maui, Nita.
That is from the trailer of Prey. Prey is directed by Dan Trachtenberg, written by Patrick Aison, scored by Sarah Schachner, with cinematography by Jeff Cutter. Unknown budget. I believe the budget projections are in the $20 to $50 million range. That's kind of what the estimate is, but it's not official. And unfortunately, because this was a movie that was being cut during being, I believe, in production or near finished, when the acquisition of Disney acquiring 20th Century Fox happened. They didn't know what to do with it, but I guess it was a good enough movie that they used it to bolster Hulu. So it did not get a theatrical release. There was a premiere where it showed in theaters, but I think, as we'll talk about, kind of a real shame this didn't get a theatrical run. So
To my understanding,
it's bolstering Hulu numbers is all I can say.
To my understanding, it was the failure of The Predator that led to this film being on Hulu.
Yeah, that lost.
In fact, The Predator almost killed the Predator franchise. The film The Predator almost killed Predator as a franchise.
It is fitting.
The naming schemes of these movies. Thank God this is called something different.
Well, it stars Amber Midthunder as our main character, Dakota Beavers, Dane DiLiegro, Stormee Kipp, Michelle Thrush, and Julian Black Antelope. And what are we going to be talking about? Well, we're going to talk about our overall thoughts of this picture, and then we will have a delineation into spoilers. We'll talk about our standout moments and talk about what makes it. Is this film a great Predator movie and why? And what is a great Predator film to ours? And really, I'd like to tack on, where does the series go from here? What would we like to see if this continues? Which, with the buzz, we may be lucky. Unfortunately, it doesn't have any big numbies. Unless Hulu gets a huge spike in subscribers. It's going to be interesting to see where this goes. So
a lot of great word of mouth, at least on film Twitter. I know that's kind of a tiny bubble, but a lot of positive reviews coming out for this movie.
Yeah, it seems to be breaking through. A couple of film buffs I know that aren't maybe the most obsessed with film Twitter seem to be hailing its praises. I have not seen anybody that dislikes this movie. But let's get into it. Our thoughts, Brian. Let's start with you. AVP wasn't really your cup of tea. We like some of the special effects, but how do we think this movie fits into the Predator franchise? Did this live up to some of the hype that I was throwing on it? What do you think of Prey?
Oh, yeah. I think it definitely lived up to the hype. And within minutes of this movie starting, some of the shots that we get, the landscapes on location, it's absolutely gorgeous. And there's no reason this shouldn't have been in a theater. I have a couple minor nitpicks that may have been slightly highlighted in a theater that I'll get to later. But this movie, largely highly recommend. Definitely many leagues above AVP for me personally. Although, like you said, the special effects in that are really, really excellent. I want to shout out to modern filmmakers, and these filmmakers in particular, for giving us amazing cold opens that just leave you with a sense of wonder and excitement for where the movie is going to go, even though, because we know this movie at this point, we know where it's going to go. But such an excellent callback to the original with the font that they use, and kind of like the old school like trademark and stuff there. Very I don't know, it really got me in the mood for this movie. I shouted out the landscape settings. We get some huge shots. We get a lot of drone stuff from above that almost feels like it does an incredible job of putting us in this time and place, and not only giving us shots from above, but also putting us on the ground, almost doing stuff similar to Chloe Zhao in Nomadland, where we just walk through this village and really get a sense of what this place is and what it feels like on an average day. And that just, it really adds to getting involved and invested in the characters in this movie. So we have our lead, Amber Midthunder, who I think I first saw her in season 1 of Legion, the FX show, which she didn't have a huge role in that. But I think this is going to be a breakout performance for her. She's incredible in this. She is pushing up against the social norms and gender norms of the time, which a lot of which are still ingrained in society today from the 1700s, of course. So we have this classic kind of like a story we've seen in Mulan or something like this, where she's really pushing up against these norms and trying to go through a lot of what the men do in terms of the rituals and the trials that make them hunters and warriors, which I think works really well and doesn't feel some of the bad faith criticism about the politics of this movie is just so overstated and ridiculous when you see how well these characters work and how believable it all is.
That's just
really
a part of the time.
Yeah.
Part of the times, you know, when it comes to film criticism, or people who haven't even seen the movie who just don't like the fact that movies like this exist, you know?
Right. And don't like movies, period, that have largely indigenous casts, right? Like, which is something that is noteworthy about this. And I did watch this movie for the first time. They offer it with a dub in Comanche, which, Chris, I know you tried this on your second watch, and I will say it's not the sort of dub where it's perfectly executed in the way that a lot of times in animation, I think it could be a little easier to adjust things to make the mouths match. Here, the mouths very much do not match. So if that takes you out of it, you can. I can understand why you'd want to default to the English, but in terms of being in this story, being in this time period, in this culture, it really added a whole other layer for me. And as I noted off mic, there are some things that are translated in the Comanche dub that we don't get subtitles for in the English dub.
Yeah, because it should be said that they speak Comanche intermittently in the English version that isn't dubbed. And in the Comanche dub, they translate all of the Comanche for you, even the ones that weren't overdubbed. So you get some like cool little fun things where characters say something out loud, and it would be in Comanche, even in the English version, that you actually get translated, which is cool. And I believe the original intent from interviews with Dan Trachtenberg was to have the movie start out purely in Comanche and then turn into English, which has been done previously in films. And I think wisely, he was like, it's not that kind of movie. I think I'll talk to it, but a lot of the strengths of the movie are knowing exactly what kind of movie it is. They kind of get I like the mix in it, and the way that they started out. It actually starts in Comanche, and then it's translated, and then we go into the story, and then there's some Comanche sprinkled throughout. So I think the English dub is probably the way to go here. But the fact that it's all in Comanche, I think this is the first like major feature film that is all in like Native American language like that, which is pretty nuts.
And I don't think the whole cast necessarily, but I'm pretty sure at least Amber Midthunder and Dakota Beavers, our two leads, did dub their own dialogue, if I read correctly.
It does sound like them.
Which is really impressive because I don't think any of the cast is Comanche, but they are, indigenous people. A lot of the main characters that we have on screen, I believe, because they shot it all in British Columbia in Canada. And that was a different tribe. I actually don't have it off the top of my head, but it wouldn't have been a Comanche tribe would have been in the Great Plains, but they wouldn't have been where they filmed. So there's a whole lot of culture that is very similar, but not exactly the same. But I like the middle ground that they struck here.
Yeah, definitely. So in wrapping up my non-spoiler thoughts, I think you're coming to this movie for the Predator, and the Predator looks incredible. I mean, it's a new take on a classic design that perfectly fits with the time and what this movie is going for. The fight choreography is excellent. I was not expecting the couple of really, really great and well-designed fight sequences that we get here. I've brought it up a lot in the last few months, but just some really great setups and payoffs with some tools and things that we get that are just really satisfying that I'm sure we'll get into when we talk spoilers. The one nitpick that I had that I think if this was in a theater, I'm not sure if they would have bulked it up or not. But aside from the Predator itself, I think the animal CG is pretty weak. Not to the point where it takes me out of the movie entirely, but noticeable and may have looked even worse had it been blown up on the big screen. But that being said, the way they use the animals, I'm largely really a fan of, which we'll get into.
There are sequences that it would be hard to capture if they were using live animals, you know?
For sure.
So I agree with you, but I do appreciate they went the route that they did, because I think it adds to some really great storytelling over the course of the film.
Yeah, I think it's largely. I totally agree that, especially a couple instances, it's not the best, but I think it's good for what it is, especially the budget, the range of budget that this film is in, and
if it's 30-40, I mean that's that's for what they do.
It was jarring at first, but I think it's so well shot that it's so forgivable. But definitely probably wouldn't have done any favors by being blown up on a larger screen. But largely, it's so interesting because I'm usually like this CG, troll of like, oh, this looks terrible. And I think, first of all, for what they do with the animals, I'm like, well, you really can't have a real animal. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of clever ways that we can talk about when we get into the actual moments that obfuscate that and still like the intensity of the scenes is still very present, which is hard to do. So I'd argue that it accomplishes its goal regardless, but I agree.
I agree with you there. I agree that the goals, like the tension is still created for sure.
Yeah. If our bar is like Planet of the Apes, the new trilogy, animals, it's severely below that. But as far as how they're
made by the same studio.
Yeah. And again, for the budget, I think they largely look really great. They could look terrible. But that's a fair criticism. Chris, you coming in. I have a feeling this movie ignited some Predator passions.
It did. It certainly did.
What did you think of Prey?
Brian makes a lot of excellent points. In fact, we could probably end the episode right now because I think he did a great job.
No, we are not
highlighting the strengths of this film.
Pre-spoilers.
First and foremost, I'm going to re-mention the cinematography in this film, because at the very beginning of the film, the cinematography is what pulls you into the movie initially. And there are some absolutely gorgeous drone shots over the course of this film. And you really do feel like you're on the Great Plains in 18th century. It does an excellent job setting you into the time period. I'm trying to think of things that Brian didn't talk about so we can add a little bit to the critique here. In regards to the Comanche dub, I came out of the movie the first time initially wishing that the entire thing was shot with them speaking Comanche from the beginning. But so going into the Comanche dub, I was excited to hear that version of the film. However, I ultimately ended up being disappointed because, as Brian mentioned, it's a dub. So the mouth movements of our actors don't necessarily match the audio in that particular dub. But other than that, this movie's absolutely fantastic. The brother-sister dynamic between Amber Midthunder and Dakota Beavers is so genuine, and you can feel the love between them. The way, Brian, like you said, the way they use the animals, the CGI animals, I love that Dan Trachtenberg has found a way to have the Predator kind of start at the bottom of the food chain and work his way up ultimately to human prey. It really sets the Predator up as this kind of hunter, this game hunter warrior from another planet, as he typically is in other films. But It's a great visual way to show us this, because obviously the Predator, as we know from other Predator films, doesn't really speak at all. So it's excellent visual storytelling, in my opinion. Same goes for Amber Midthunder and her character Naru. The film does a great job juxtaposing her character and the Predator as kind of up-and-coming warriors. There's some excellent action pieces that I want to talk about in spoilers that are like back-to-back, that are essentially mirrors of one another, which are just fucking awesome, to say the least. But yeah, I absolutely adored this movie. I heard it was good going into it. Christian was the first one to watch it, and I heard it was great from other critics as well. I didn't expect it to be this good, though. And I am sad that we didn't get to see it in a theater. In regards to the Predator design, I know, Brian, you said you really liked the way the Predator looks. I really like the way the Predator looks when his mask is on. I think the design of the actual flesh Predator face, it's not my favorite Predator design. I think there have been stronger designs in the franchise before, but in terms of what he looks like when he's wearing his helmet, it's an excellent way to kind of capture the Predator silhouette, but set it in a time period that's hundreds of years prior to the setting of the first Predator movie.
And his mask,
it still feels like he's
a bear skull.
Is it actually a bear skull?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Are you sure it's not an alien skull?
No, I'm almost certain it's from the skull of a bear on Earth.
Okay,
but it's made out of.
I mean,
regardless,
that's pretty cool.
Made out of it's made out of.
It's definitely some type of bone integrated with the Predator species technology, which I really like, because considering we're dealing with a Comanche tribe, their weapons, while effective, are also somewhat primitive. So you would hope that the Predator, which is a technologically advanced species, also has kind of more primitive weapons than he does in the first Predator film, considering that it's so far set in the past. And I think they do an excellent job balancing that. This movie was great. If you haven't seen it, go see it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So I'm the Predator fanboy. I love me the Predator. I think most of the movies are not great movies, but I still enjoy them. I think the first one, especially, I revisited it, more thoughts on that, is an absolute classic, and I think of it higher as I get older, as a work of art. Despite its cliche action roots and stuff. More on that next week. But needless to say, I was very excited because 10 Cloverfield Lane, I don't have any love for the Cloverfield franchise. And Dan Trachtenberg came in and made a really suspenseful, character-driven B horror thriller action movie on a minimal budget, and I thought it was excellent. I thought it was some of the best suspense I'd seen all year that came out. And knowing that he was going to get a hold of the Predator franchise, I had very high hopes, and my hopes were exceeded. I think this is almost a perfect B movie. And I don't mean that to be derogatory. It's because the movie's really not about much more than this really primal conflict, and it is still rooted in its own genres. It is an interesting machination of historical fiction and sci-fi thriller. It's kind of where it lives. What I did not expect was for it to have a ponderous, relatively slow first act that is all planting seeds for a second and third act that is just a thrill ride. The film is designed as a roller coaster that slowly goes up, and you get to the top, and it really does not stop. From a particular scene that's highlighted in the trailer, once that scene hits, I mean, this movie is going to town. It doesn't overstay its welcome, and it's perfect in its ideas of how it sets up the entire conflict, the dichotomy between Amber Midthunder, who's quite excellent, as well as the Predator. And it's actually, it's something that you, by the end of it, you're putting war paint on, and you're standing and you have a spear in your hand, and you're stomping it, and you're like, yes, they must fight. And it's that, it gets you to such a primal place of survival that is the point of this kind of movie. And it's really the first Predator sequel. It's actually a prequel technically, right? But one of these Predator movies that takes us back to the roots of the conflict and really breaks down and still manages, although breaking down and becoming a very similar movie to the original, still manages to elaborate on the lore, come up with new ideas. This is the most visually interesting Predator we've had since the beginning. I mean, this is the biggest divergence, and it makes sense because their species would have been 300 years older. And what does that look like?
Right.
And what you see come of that is the Predator tech, but taken back 300 years. And it seems so logical with all the different gadgets that the Predator has. I think that this is the best acting we've gotten from a Predator man in costume as well as CG. There's so much life, and even though he doesn't say a word, there's so much communicated by how he behaves, or he or she. I'm actually not sure if this Predator is gendered by the creators, but it is just such a far different Predator while maintaining the kind of things we expect from these movies. The score is absolutely excellent. It is perfectly paced with the tone of the film as it goes on. It has these big, sweeping, broad musical strokes throughout the adventure portion of our tale, and then goes into full action thriller all the way to heroism. And there's actually like a theme that pops at the end that it really guided my emotions all the way to the very end.
It's so hopeful. Like
Yeah.
the score is so inspiring and hopeful over the course of the movie.
Yeah.
Outside of those big action beats that you were just talking about.
And really to have action that is the best action that I've seen in a film this year. To have genuine oneers that are so well choreographed. Like that was the stuff I wasn't expecting. And to have it be like the color of this film is so rich and earthy, which matches our characters in the tone, that there's not much I can complain about. I immediately watched it the next day. I was only planning on watching it once, and I was home, and I popped it on for my fiance and my brother, and they loved it. And it's not a movie that they would generally. Oh, Brian, you were there too, which was excellent. You were like, "Hey, try to pop by." I was like, "Hey, I'm just watching Prey again. I just have to watch it again." And it was I enjoyed it again just as much as the first time, which is saying something for a movie like this. I rewound it multiple times on the first viewing to like certain shots we'll talk about that I was like, "What the fuck?" and rewound it and was like, "I have to see how they did it." And it was just it was everything I've wanted from a Predator sequel for like my entire life, that I am just so proud of the crew that put it together. We've talked about how it's the Native American experience, and it's a woman protagonist. And I can't say this enough. It's interesting because she's a woman because of the time and place, and they don't overstate that stuff too much. You just get it, and it's mostly told through story. There's a couple of lines of like that set the tone for what you need, but it does not overplay its and now you're dealing with a woman. Like, it is just this young woman's struggle to find a place and break through norms and survive, and you just are on that journey with her, and all the other baggage is just part of her experience. It's clearly shown. It's so not preachy about any of that, and you just get this visceral experience that I think most people, if you just pop on this film, regardless of how they would feel about if you said, well, the new Predator movie's got a chick for it, like, just put it on. You'll be in her shoes, you'll feel what she feels, and that's fucking good filmmaking. And when it comes to the indigenous tribes, the great thing about diversity in film is that you get unique perspectives about how different cultures live, about how different cultures interacted, the struggles they went through, the things they overcame. It's not just about putting, people of color and diverse genders on screen. It's not just about that. It's like, let's explore that. Let's learn about that. And this film, as goofy as the premise is, feels genuine to the Native American experience. It's so tactful in how it handles their way of life, how they talk to each other, their relationships, their culture, that it mirrors, they're hunter-gatherers, right? And you have a story about a hunter, literally a game hunter, and that is one of the most interesting perspectives you could put, one of the most interesting places you could put this type of conflict in. It directly reflects their culture as well as the history of this sci-fi alien creature from space. Like, it's so fucking well done. It's so well done. It's so cool. This is the types of movies that like make me go, yeah, this is the kind of stuff I put on a pedestal and go like, this is why we need diversity in Hollywood. This is why, because this shit wouldn't be as cool if it was from the perspective of the white French people. Okay, it just wouldn't be as interesting. It would be well trodden.
Looking at you, Brian.
Looking at you, Frenchie.
Oh boy.
But yeah, the setups and payoffs are just perfectly placed. There's a little redundancy in kind of the theming, but again, this movie really isn't about much more than surviving and embracing that, like getting involved in that culture and getting into our main character's shoes. There's not much character development outside our predator and our prey, as it were, but that's all the movie needs to be. It's a tight, like, fucking 90 minutes, dude. This is a good time. I'm so happy. I want to watch it again. I might watch it.
Let's just stop recording now and just watch it again. I do want to watch it again. So
I'm so proud of Danny Trachtenberg's. I give him so many opportunities. I hope he gets up to do something original, because he's kind of only done like 2 reboots. But man, the guy just knows how to go to basics, make an interesting film, and make it exciting, and get in and get out. And I really appreciate it for movies like this. I think that's really important. I think if we lingered a lot longer on some relationships, the movie would suck more. And Dan knows that. And this movie is better for it. It is what it is, and it's fucking great. And it's a good time. It's suspenseful. It's sound design, wear headphones or put it on your speaker system. Like, it delivers on that front. Just fucking, oh my God. And the Predator kills, dude. You want cool B movie fucking kills. Like,
we learned that the Predator definitely has roasted some giant marshmallows. Let's just say that.
He's been roasted over an open fire. Gentlemen, I'm a happy boy. I got a good Predator movie for the first, like, I like a lot of Predator movies. We're going to talk about some of them. They have not hit these heights yet. This is...
Well, I mean, when the last one was such a stinker...
There's good stuff about it. It's not... I don't think it's an all around bad movie. But to get a genuinely good movie that I was questioning even the second time through, going like, is this... how is this... this is technically better than the original in some ways. I don't think it'll have the cultural relevance. It just can't. Being a reductive work of art. But man, if it isn't like second by a country mile, if it's not really neck and neck with that original and just far above anything else we've got, God damn it. I love this movie. It's fucking gonna be rivaling my top movie of the year just for pure enjoyment. It's just so good. I might watch it 100 times. I seriously hope it gets a bluey. I'm buying this. I want to put it on my wall. I want to own it.
That's the one thing that I've been fretting over the course of the last 24 hours is like, you know, I want to get that 4K copy of the Predator that you have, Christian. I definitely want to rebuy Predators, but I don't know if this is going to get a physical release, and that makes me very sad.
It could have been in the contract when they made it, so it might actually legally need to have one.
That would be great.
20th century stuff like Heat came out finally. So, you know, they had that in the can for a while. So some of these contractually, I think, may have to come out. Obviously, we don't know any of that information. But I was seeing rumblings that they're like, oh, it's for sure going to come to physical at some point.
Can't wait.
Especially because it debuted in streaming, and, you know, they want to make some money on the back end, especially with how cult of a hit it is. Come on, Disney. Get your head out of your ass.
And just to be clear, for those of you who are still with us who haven't seen this yet, it's currently streaming on Hulu and Disney Plus, I believe.
Disney Plus in the UK. Disney Plus outside of
the United States.
Outside the US? Okay.
Outside
so
of the
Hulu
United
in the
States.
US.
Yeah.
A lot of
Hulu currently has all the Predator films.
Right. So you can join us for this journey along. I don't love the compression of Hulu. I watched it on both, and it really crushes the fuck out of blacks, and that's why I was like, and a lot of the best scenes are in dark places.
They are.
And that's a little disappointing. That's part of the reason why I really like physical, because even on I have a great wired internet connection, and it still managed to, God, every time I see a torchlight and you just see like rings around it, blurry pixelated rings that I want to I want to go punch a mouse in the face. Anyway, so that's enough of that. Let's gush over some specific moments and get into spoilers. Spoilers for Prey starting now. I know I need to give the floor to someone else because I've just been talking nonsense for 15 minutes about how much I love this movie. But the Predator throws a fucking bear trap at a French man's face.
He does indeed.
And I peed myself. And I rewound it and I watched it 100 times because they fucking planted the seed of the bear trap. The bear trap's there. Predator picks it up, flings it over his shoulder, and fucking fastballs it into a guy's face. And I was like, that's the coolest fucking shit I've ever seen in my goddamn life. And, oh God, can we just talk about that scene?
Okay, so
that scene actually ties into what I mentioned earlier in our conversation about the scenes that mirror one another. So if you want to talk about
go
that,
for it. Explain that.
Go for it, Chris. Yeah. Yes.
So you mentioned, Christian, that there's a oneer in this movie. There are actually a couple in this movie. And the scene that you're talking about, Christian, takes place in this really beautifully, like, it's like an ashy forest. Like the forest has been burned and the Predator has found all these French trappers and he's just like going through them, like absolutely annihilating them,
mauling.
And while the second time I watched this, I was looking for when the oneer starts, and it's not as long as the scene that I'm going to talk about after this, the scene that mirrors this sequence. But there is a shot in this sequence where the Predator's just like murdering these French trappers, where it does follow him for a couple seconds as he kills a few people.
And there's a few cuts, but I need to emphasize it is not cut to pieces. I mean,
no, it's still very well edited together.
It is. You can follow everything so well in a world full of close, shaky action. Even the fact that it's not a oneer, it feels so cohesive from when our Predator jumps in and starts fucking shit up that you're like, oh my dude, like 300 vibes, like. I compared this scene to the Viking raid scene in Northman. I think technically, I have to give it to the Northman. It's a pretty incredible oneer. I do. But rivaling in a fucking direct-to-streaming, low-budget B movie, like, come on.
Northman's made for double the cost of this,
right,
or more. So, yeah.
Anyway, a fucking beautiful display of his weapons and gadgetry and him, like, just kind of showing off. Like, once he starts punking these guys. Oh, it's brutal.
No chance.
But you're comparing it, I believe, to the scene that follows, right, Chris?
Yes. So the scene that follows this one shows Naru going back into the French trapper camp after, like, most of them have been slaughtered to get her dog, Sorry. And in the process, there are like a couple stragglers that she needs to kill that have seen her in the encampment. And this is the sequence that is just fucking awesome. The camera follows her as she like murders maybe 5 different French trappers. And it's just so action packed. And it's toward the end of the second act, beginning of the third act. So like the movie's done a beautiful job of showing us Naru and her like building her hunting skills. She's a very adept tracker and she's great with medicine, but we kind of see her growth as a hunter over the course of this movie. And this action sequence just perfectly mirrors what the Predator's doing in the scene prior, because now finally at this point in the film we see they're ready to take each other on. They are equals for the most part, maybe not in strength, but at least in terms of movement and skill. And this sequence is just so badass. She's throwing her weapon and pulling it back and dodging and rolling, and the camera's just like following her through the whole thing. It's just very, very cool. And then it caps it off by showing both of them kind of tending to their wounds and healing each other, or not healing each other, but healing themselves, prepping for the final confrontation. So I just really absolutely loved, and I didn't really catch this on the first viewing. It was only on the second viewing that I was like tracking how this maybe 20-minute sequence was edited together. And it's just excellent filmmaking. It's so great.
Yeah.
It also speaks to character. It's character building as well, which is some of the best filmmaking that I love, when you're using visuals to further our character development.
'Tis the medium. And yeah, I love, you mentioned them building the skill set. Like he does it so much, but if you remember the opening, she's throwing her axe against the tree, walking,
practicing. Yeah.
It's it breathes.
The sound design here, we didn't really specifically shout it out, but incredible there. I wish like that sort of thing in a theater. I could tell it was already kind of like very visceral for me watching it at home, but even things like, it seems relatively minor, but I really feel like that really would have added to this movie.
Good call on the headphones, by the way, Christian. I watched it
Absolutely.
with my special headphones.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm wearing them right now. They're great. I also watched this movie with those headphones. Good call. Yes.
Sorry for cutting you off, Christian.
No, but you see her training with it, and then later she's trying to hunt a rabbit, and that's when she comes up with the idea to tie it to a string and pull it so that she can she's like, well, if I'm going to miss a whole bunch, at least I'll be able to like pull it back really fast. And you see the logic that she goes through. And fun fact about Amber Midthunder's character, she was inspired by Billy, who is a Native American from the original Predator. And they really focus on his ability. Like, he's the first person to know the Predator's there, if you remember the original Predator.
I mean, he's like an adept tracker out of their whole squad. He's like the best tracker there is.
And she's based on that. And really what you get is that, you know, she doesn't have as much as, she's very fast, she's very agile, but she doesn't have as much as the physical fortitude that the other hunters in her party have. And really the movie shows that, but she's a whole hell of a lot smarter. And once she bridges this gap and gets a couple more skills, she'd be unstoppable. And I love that the movie builds that up to her using her agility and intelligence to face off against the Predator. Is very cool. It's very cool. But yeah, going back to that action set piece, Brian, did you have anything else you wanted to say about it? That really stuck out.
Well, I kind of actually, not specifically about that, but kind of more to what you were just saying, the progression of the tomahawk as we see it, because we get the silly and hilarious line from the guy who says you need a leash for your weapon or something like that, because he just doesn't get it, and he's kind of just casting doubt on her abilities.
Yeah, that was his like third asshole.
He doesn't last long. So
it was his third asshole thing, and you're like, this is the first guy the Predator's gonna fucking take.
This is one of my standout moments, is when he's just talking shit and gets wrecked by the lion in the tree. It's perfect, and like, no one's feeling bad for this guy. But the progression of the tomahawk usage, she gets made fun of for it. And then we see her getting trapped in this quicksand sort of swamp pit and using it to escape, eventually uses a trap later. I loved that. Like the tension of that shot of her slowly sinking and having to try and throw this. It reminded me of, although it's not our favorite movie, the scene in Fallen Kingdom. That's really good, where we get a crawling scene through a swamp as well. Just really, really effective and really tense. So the whole tomahawk, the progression of that, and the bear trap, those two things are absolute highlights for me that I kind of shouted out early.
The mud trap is also a misdirect. Because we know, if we know the original Predator, that mud makes your heat not as visible to the Predator. And so
cools
she gets
you,
stuck in mud, and you know the Predator is really close. The movie does such a... We talked about AVP, and one of my problems was it's so hard for time and place of where these characters are in this underground pyramid in that movie. In this movie, from the Predator making kills that they cut in between, and the actions of our protagonist going through and seeing the markings of the Predator, like, the Predator's close, and the Predator is kind of like around her. And there's this moment where she falls in the mud that you're like, oh, this is the scene where the Predator's going to come by and she's going to realize that she can hide from heat. And the movie totally misdirects and is like, no, she cleans herself off. And it's actually the stuff that cools your, like, this medicine that they set up that is more important later on. And I thought that was so fucking cool, the way that I was like, so they're really not gonna have her learn about the mud? Because that was like,
Predator movie not each, but like several of the Predator movies do this same thing, where they introduce an element that helps to cool the body in some way, or in another movie we're going to talk about, just disguise yourself in heat basically to blind the Predator. But I appreciate that they didn't go the mud route and they went a more effective route for the time.
And we still see that it's not foolproof either, because our one character who has recently been nearly killed, obviously.
Well, he gets stepped on. So it's his scream that gives him away.
And game over, right?
Yeah. Any other? I don't want to talk too much. I could talk about this movie all night, and I don't want to do that to you guys. Is there any other stand-up moments that you want to mention?
I think just kind of in terms of the world building stuff, I thought the guys finding their fallen comrade and building the stretcher immediately just really felt like, oh, this is so practical. Obviously, they would know how to do something like this and be able to do it on a dime wherever they are to carry someone away. I felt kind of like an idiot, and maybe I'd had this realization before, but a dog fetching tools to actually use in something like this, it was the first time I was like, oh yeah, fetch used to be because we needed wood in the forest, I guess. Kind of silly, but something that I'd never like consciously been like, oh, that makes perfect sense. So just little things like that. And you speaking to the medicine and things and showing how these sorts of herbal medicines can be ridiculously effective. And even though they don't have the what modern day people would call scientific understanding of things, they've gone through so much trial and error throughout generations and whatever methods they came to this stuff that there's really complex and effective healing techniques that are really ancient.
I love that. Yeah. And that plays into that, like promoting the indigenous people as what they were good at, what their culture was. And it was like, they're gatherers, and you can see that when she has to make medicine really quick, and she like grabs some mushrooms, she grabs stuff like tree branches, and like it's so cool. And that stretcher scene, seeing them being able to assimilate stuff from nature, and I think that plays really well into probably maybe the weakest part, which is probably the most predictable, but still I think just works so well in this movie, which is the dichotomy between her and the French people that she runs into, where you see that scene. I love that scene of all the buffalo that were skinned. Mm-hmm. And you think your first thought is like, oh, the predator just fucked up a bunch of buffalo, but the predator would not like mercilessly kill that many buffalo. It would have only killed one buffalo, the buck, as it were, and
and then would have moved on to the next challenging,
claimed its skull,
prey.
And you can see like this is what I love too. There's actually like so many similarities between the predator culture and the indigenous people, where like they you can see the indigenous people have like trophies of the things that they've killed, right? They tear off the head to prove like, hey, this area is safe and I can prove my kill here. Predators do the same thing. It's more for like show than it is for like actual protection in the game, and they're like gamesmen. But seeing the fact that the predator has that bear skull or some sort of creature skull attached, like it kills the dog, which is horrific. I'm sorry, Chris. That was the dog's blood, by the way. You're like, does the dog die? You started the movie. You said, this dog better not die. And I said, dog's...
It's a wolf, I think, yeah.
And I said, dog's blood is shed because that one wolf.
No, animal lovers, the main dog lives. And that's what I was asking about. I was asking about... Sorry,
oh, no, I know. I wanted to purposely confuse you. And I said, dog's
I don't know.
blood
As soon as I saw the wolf scene, I was like... I think this is what he was talking about.
Yeah. And the dog bites back, though, which is...
He does. He's a great moment in the final battle.
He's reliable. No. He comes back.
The wolf that he kills. So he kills the wolf and claims his skull and puts it on his side. Mm-hmm. And, excuse me, let me get her brother.
You keep calling it a dog. It's not a dog.
I mean, it's a canine. It's part of the dog family, bud.
It is a canine, but it's not a dog.
Come on. It's a doggo. It's a fierce doggo.
I'd pet that guy.
You're telling me, okay, so what's the difference between a Siberian Husky and a wolf? It is not a whole lot of DNA, my friend. They're dogs. They're not they're not dogs you can domesticate. Anyway, but he kills the dog, he puts it on his side, and then Taabe, is that how you say it? Her brother's name? In his last moment to give Midthunder a second, Naru a second to escape, grabs the dog skull and jams it into the predator. And I was always like, oh yeah, dog bites back, baby.
Yeah.
Thought that was good. So for our dog lovers, he gets some revenge even in death, which I appreciated. And this movie,
he got his moment.
It's full of little moments like that, full of like little tiny nods to itself or to the original. We get a lot of great perspective shots from humans up into the sky, observing the trees of something that might be out there. That's very classic Predator.
Taabe literally says, if it bleeds, we can kill it.
Which in Comanche is the coolest line. I was like, I need to hear what that sounds like in Comanche, and it's awesome. And I was going to try to memorize it for the show, but my Comanche is pretty rough. We'll see how many viewings I can get through. Maybe I can learn a little bit. And then the final thing, I love that final bout. The Predator, you get this great dichotomy of what's come before and what's now. You get the Predator covered in mud to Midthunder, roaring, very, very similar to what we get with Arnold in the final bout in the original. And it's that kind of thing where the movie made sense completely without understanding the original Predator. you would have gotten just as much action and excitement. But this is the kind of fan service that I'm here for. It's just telling me,
subtle.
I love you, fan of Predator. Don't worry, someone who loves Predator made this movie too, and you can enjoy it. It's not necessary, but immediately I recognized that. I was like, man, Danny Trachtenberg.
In good hands.
Good hands for this film. Anything else before we get to our kind of closing discussion?
I just wanted to comment on something you had said about, I think there is a little bit more to the connection between Naru and in the Comanche here and the Predators. And it's kind of extra textual in terms of coming from like AVP and stuff. Because in AVP, we're introduced to this idea of this being a ritual for them, coming down as a ritual process to Earth. And there they were fighting alien human hybrids or whatever it is there. I think something similar here, because this Predator gets dropped off in this location at the beginning of the movie. So I think he is kind of going through the same sort of trial.
It's a rite of passage, yeah.
That Naru is going through here, which I appreciate it. And it's kind of, like I said, they don't really explicitly say it, but the way we see him progress similar to her, I think there is a nice little through line there.
Yeah, I think the trifecta of our Comanches, the French, and the Predator is the Predator hunts for sport and for pride. The Frenchmen hunt for wealth, and the Comanche hunt to survive. And they mentioned that several times, of like them going out and hunting is to hunt the bigger predator that would threaten their livelihood and eat their children. And they don't, and they use only what they need. They're horrified by the sight of, and of course this is a historical thing. The American buffalo was nearly driven extinct because of colonialism. Because of it was hunted for profit, right? And I love that this movie, like, if I wanted my mom to watch this movie, it was never gonna happen because she would. Such a digression. I made her watch Speed. I got Speed on 4K, and I watched it at my parents' place. And we just kind of watched it while we were all hanging out. And she would just be like, only in Hollywood. And when someone got their head torn off, she'd be like, why you gotta put that mess on screen? And I get that. I love you, Mary Beth Katie. You're my favorite. She made me pot roast. It was so good.
I love that mess. I was like, that's exactly what she would say.
That's exactly.
Like, that's so spot on.
Yeah. So if she watches, she'd be like, there's all this violence. What's the point of it? And it's a good question. I think it's a question you should ask when you're watching violence. And the reason I love this movie is because it puts that violence in perspective and in ethics of there's a difference between hunting to live, hunting for sport, and hunting for profit. And clearly our heroes and our protagonists are, I believe, being a super hippy dippy kind of guy, is like, yeah, I don't have a problem with hunting. I don't have a problem with killing things in the right context of living your life and not for sport, not for profit, but just to survive. If it means your survival, of course, like that is the way of life. And I love this movie about alien space hunter, is so beautiful in delineating this thing and making me not feel so bad that I do enjoy watching the Predator fuck up some Frenchmen and maybe a Native American who
they deserve it,
a dick to women. And also he gets his ass beat by Amber Midthunder too, which is pretty nice. She clocks.
Oh yeah,
pretty good.
He gets put in his place.
Yeah.
I will say Dan Trachtenberg did an excellent job here, and I don't think Shane Black would have done better necessarily, but I think Shane Black would have taken the opportunity to have the Predator pick up one of those big old cigars and smoke it.
Oh my God.
That would have been awesome. So next one for the sequel
around it.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
I don't think Shane Black's ever going to be allowed to touch a Predator movie ever again. So
I'll close before we get into the final thoughts. I do want to just mention this. The moment in the final fight, which I've heard complaints that it feels a little too easy. And I'm like, it's not the highlight and action set piece, but I think it does its job. I think it's very entertaining. When the Predator gets his shield and puts our Naru against the crevice and she goes up and he's got the shield. Chris, you said you don't love the Predator design in his face, but that where it's coming up and it cuts to it being right on her neck and the Predator roars in her face. I mean, that's a gif right there, baby.
there's something goofy about the way the eyes are set in this Predator construction compared to the original Predator or even the Predator in Predators. There's just something about the design that seems a little more cartoony to me than past Predator costumes.
Yeah, I think he looks terrifying. I would actually say that from a horror perspective, oh my God, this creature, especially within that shot and some of the other shots, the way that they light the predator, it's very effective, and I think it's scarier. It looks more alien. I love the predator design. I think even in the original full face predator, I think the eyes look a little too human, and it looks like a guy just like with big mandibles. I think I prefer this one from the eyes perspective, which is interesting. Oh God, we could talk about this whole movie all the time. We can just have a podcast about this movie and how much I love it. Okay, last thing, I promise. Him being cloaked, killing the bear, and appearing in blood, and that's the first time she's seeing it. Dude.
Okay. No, thank goodness you brought that up, because it's fucking awesome.
It is very cool.
It's just badass. Yeah.
Like how to reveal the invisibility of the predator and actually her like that is such a great fucking idea. And it's like we get so much, we're treated so well. A smorgasbord of some of the best ideas in this whole
Well fed.
Whole time, and it's terrifying and scary. I mix this as the Revenant meets Predator meets a John Wick in some cases. Like that is the mashup that you're getting, and I think as we say on the show, we're all very present for the things happening. Gentlemen, in this context, I think we all like this movie. Some more than others.
I love this movie.
I love that.
It's currently my second favorite movie of 2022.
You know what? If only there was a fiction that described the Batman versus Predator. If only. Weekly upload. Stay tuned. We'll see. I think I'm supposed to get it tomorrow. More to come on that. So this movie's really effective. I think we all like the original. Brian, you still need to rewatch it. But
I do.
In that context, why is this a great Predator movie? What makes a great Predator movie? Chris, we'll start with you.
So I think you kind of mapped it out during the AVP episode, if I'm correct. I can't remember if it was during the AVP episode or just during our conversations, but I agree with you that the best Predator films are the films that are able to illustrate both parties and how strong they are over the course of the film. So for instance, I'm not going to talk about the first Predator film. We're going to talk about that next week. But in this film, what I alluded to earlier with the way the animals are used in this movie, he starts by killing a snake, then he kills a wolf, then he kills a bear, then he kills the Comanche warriors, then he moves on to the French trappers, and then finally we have the conflict with Naru. So from the Predator's side, there's a term in wrestling, certain wrestlers will be jobbers. Their sole purpose is to show the strength of the hero, or in this case, the villain wrestler, right? It happens in Dragon Ball Z all the time. Certain characters will be taken down by an enemy to show how strong that particular enemy is. At the beginning of Avengers Infinity War, Thanos kills Loki, our prior greatest villain, to show how strong he is. So this is a trope that takes place in storytelling all the time. From our main character's perspective in the Predator films, the best Predator movies are the ones that pit our main characters against seemingly insurmountable odds. In this movie, as we talked about, Naru is a female in her tribe. She's looked down on. They don't believe she can be a hunter, and yet she's incredibly skilled at this particular thing. And only through using her brains and her skills is she able to take down the Predator. And that's very similar theming to what we see in the original Predator as well. So I think the best Predator films are the films that do this particular thing, where they put the character against insurmountable odds, this seemingly super powerful enemy to overcome. And they don't use their traditional skills to beat it, but instead their brains. And I really like that. At least from the three Predator movies that I've seen, those are the strengths of those films.
Yeah. Brian, any other insight into unlocking what you think makes a good Predator film?
I don't know if I can do much better than you guys have laid out. Chris, I definitely agree with what you're saying here. Something that I mentioned last week prior to having watched this one, just this idea of giving us that tension of what it's like to be hunted. And I think this movie does that incredibly well at points. Christian, I hadn't consciously thought of the three different ways. Apologies. I hadn't thought of the three different ways that hunting or killing is being presented here, but I think that is really, really excellently portrayed here. Agreed. And something that, it kind of just is implicit within it. But now that you pointed out, it's like this is so core to what it means to live in accordance with nature, getting this indigenous perspective and highlighting these different levels of separation from that sort of closeness to human life. But I think you guys have said it all. I think that's you've nailed it. What makes a good Predator movie. And I feel a little silly not having watched the original recently to really get perspective here, but
you'll see it. Yeah,
I will.
The only final thing I'll say, and it's core. We said, Chris, you brought up most of the points. Brian finished off very well. We said a lot about it. I think the core of the Predator character, though, and I said this last week, is all about like the respect the Predator has for what it's hunting, and it does have something that aligns with the Comanches is a respect for the forces of survival, right? And the gamesmanship of the Predator. And what I think they really nailed with this character is the fact that you see him take on various animals up until humans, and you can see that he does not hunt the bear with his like cool like spike rifle thing with the tracker. No. He knows the bear is strong. He goes to fight with the bear on the bear's terms. When he fights the wolf, he lets it like samurai style, lets the wolf charge him and beats the wolf with speed. And then when it comes to humans,
if the wolf has teeth, he's going to use what he considers his teeth,
Yeah. And it's not until we get to the Native Americans pulling out their bows that he's like, all right, you're going to shoot shit. Like, I got one on you. Now we've entered that. So you can, and it's cool because they do the perspective where the Predator scans the weapon and goes, that's the kind of thing you have. Cool. All right, game. And so, although he is a bit of a cheater because he goes fucking invisible, which is kind of advantageous, there's still a level of gamesmanship that the Predator always follows, and kind of a code of how you claim hunts and how you actually engage in combat. There's sort of a rule of like, and you see it in multiple Predator films where when a human is just armed with like hands or a weapon, that the Predator's like, all right, cool, and then isn't going to plasma kill them. It's only when the humans engage with projectiles that he's like, all right, you want to throw shit at each other? All right, I got something to throw at you.
And I do like that he takes real damage too throughout the course of this because of this. It's like he's definitely I think it helps with the stakes because, as you said, Chris, it's relatively insurmountable task in terms of if he's at his full capacity. But we see that there are levels where he's playing on their field, so it still feels like possible.
And kind of the comeuppance for the Predator is he breaks this rule at the end. He gets bested, gets frustrated, and pulls out his rifle, even though our main character does not have a bow. She does not have a pistol, a musket. And he goes, all right, fuck this shit. And that's what kills him. And she's like, you're going to do it because you're scared now, because you're now in survival mode, that you'll do anything and you'll break your rule and it's going to kill you. And it's
this after he was shot in the back of the head, though? Because I think they did use a gun on him, right?
Oh, she did, but she didn't.
She shot him in the back of the head to grab his mask initially.
Yeah.
Okay. He just ate that shot. I gotta say, just took it.
Yeah. I maybe could have used a moment of her like shooting him in the back of the head and being like, please be it. Okay, it's not it. All right, cool. Plan B. But she just kind of like knows it's not going to be enough. She also like points it at a trapper that's like in the distance, and I was thinking the whole time like, that fucking musket could not shoot that fucking guy from that far away. It's not gonna happen. So she pulls away for like, oh, I've got a better plan. But I was also like, your first plan sucks ass because you can't hit shit with a musket from that far away. It's just not.
She has no idea though.
I know we had a conversation about this section of the show, and I don't mean for it to drag on longer, but you brought up the muskets, and there's an excellent moment where the trapper's explaining how to load the musket to her, and you can see on her face that she's just like, this is so fucking unnecessary. I think she even says, and then what? But it's in this tone where it's like, you've already given me so many fucking steps. So this is a very ineffective weapon.
We also get the moment
I absolutely love that.
conveys to the audience that they are muskets indeed. And there's a shot where they shoot and he's got the shield, which is, it's like Cap's shield, but for the Predator. Very cool.
But notice that the Predator stops fighting them to let them load the gun.
They start reloading. It's such a funny little comedic beat of like, oh yeah, that's right. They're fucking muskets.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, he's totally toying with them. So cool. Oh, there's a shot where he's like jumping above Naru to the track. Oh, it's full of so much of that shit. So good. Anyway, I think we've adequately covered why this movie's badass. Did you enjoy Prey? Let us know in the comments. What were some of your favorite moments? I think in ending this, I'll ask very quickly because I know we're over an hour. But and feel free to throw in the comments as well, YouTube watchers, or email us at popholicscast@gmail.com, audio listeners. Where do you want to see the Predator go from here? Where do you want to see this character explored further? Brian, we'll start with you.
Honestly, I feel like I'm not good at this kind of speculation. I've seen people online talking about, put this in all different sorts of time periods now. And I feel like if it just went for the gimmicky route like that, it wouldn't necessarily work. I think there was something fundamental, a core idea that really worked with this one. So I definitely wouldn't mind seeing more of these characters in this tribe. I think it would be interesting to see what happens after this. I guess I didn't see it, but I read that there's a post-credits scene where we see 3 ships.
It's not a post-credits scene. It's at the very end of the credits. So if you watch the animated credits, the last scene is Naru standing on a cliff with it was all shown in like not cave paintings, but like drawings. Right. And there are 3 ships landing.
So, I mean, if we see something where everyone's progressing, we have a bit of a time jump maybe, and see another weapons progression maybe, I might be down for something like that, even though it kind of goes against how I started this. But I'm just here for if the action choreography and the effects are on this level, it's not going to be hard to sell me on another of these movies.
Chris, where would you like to see the series go from here?
I think I'm about to say something very unpopular.
Shut it down.
And that is, the Predator franchise has had such a rocky go of it. There have been great movies. There have been just awful movies. And I think you need to know when to walk away from something. And I think ending with Prey, ending on such a high note, solidifies Predator as a franchise as mostly great, But if you're going to look at Prey and if you're an executive and you're going to look at Prey and you're going to go, why do so many people love this movie? What is it about this movie that people love? And you're going to cling to this conceit that the Predator is in a time period way in the past and it makes it more interesting. I think you're pulling the wrong things away from what this movie is and what makes this movie special. So if the Predator franchise is going to proceed with like, let's put the Predator back on Earth like 100 years from now, like early 1900s. Like, I honestly am not really here for that. I think Prey is a very special thing, and I think they should walk away at this point. So I'm not entirely against them making another one if they find another script that is unique and different for the franchise. But again, if they look at this and they go rinse and repeat, executives, you learn the wrong lesson, I think.
Okay, I have a quick idea, and I'm not sure if they've done this in the sequels already, but have we gotten a home planet / off Earth predators?
Yeah.
Okay, so Predators is okay. All right. Because I was gonna say maybe we flip the script and see someone prepping for the Predator trials. Okay. All right. So I'm just pitching a movie that already exists. All right.
And they actually do well. You'll see it, Brian.
Yeah, that was
very interesting.
That was Robert Rodriguez's idea. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff happening in that movie. I think it's a lot of good ideas, and execution leaves a lot to be desired. But we'll get into that more as we go along through the Predator month. You know what? I'm for the time period thing. I'm going to say it. I think the idea that a predator has landed and hunts man as the top prey of the top predator, apex predator of this generation, I think it's awesome. I think all the coolest ideas are about it interacting, seeing, especially in this movie, this is the first movie to do it, showing the progression of their civilization and just teasing it, giving us hints. I think it's a little dangerous when you're like, let's talk about Predator's culture. They don't talk. So that makes it extremely difficult to have an engaging story around that. And getting the humans to the Predator land is kind of, unless you do something in the future. I don't know. Obviously, if it's a good script, it's a good script. But I'm thinking like time periods that I think are ripe for this. I think like World War I, World War II era, because you have different weaponry and stuff. And, you can do things that are, a specific group of like special forces in World War II. Like I just saw Overlord, and I'm thinking like there's a lot of like cool set pieces and ideas that you could have. I think you continue this commentary of hunters, prey, and predator, all this stuff in the different context of what humans you're following tell different stories. And I do think that that's where probably the most interesting stuff is. I don't think I want a sequel to this as far as Prey 2 and it's Naru later and there's another Predator. Like I don't love that, but I do love Naru. So I do love Amber Midthunder. So I think either that or you do a very different generation. I don't think you go farther back in the past. I think sticking with these, last 500-year modern eras is probably the way to go. And so I'd be down for like a historical World War II fiction in which like the Predator is hunting a bunch of like American soldiers, but then the Nazis are involved. So I don't know. That could be a cool trifecta of forces coming together. So sorry, I'm gonna keep on the trend of no.
That's fine.
I think you dropped that Predator in multiple different eras.
Like I said, if there's a good script behind it, go for it.
Yeah, I think everybody can agree all around every movie that the script's good. That's a good start. All right. That's going to do
That's not where all films start, though, Christian, as you know. So
I'm very much aware. What I love is written by is just one person on this film, which is a boon to most movies.
Strong side.
Very cool.
That's Prey. What did you think again? Let us know, loyal listeners. Chris, what do we got coming up next week?
Christian, next week.
We've hinted.
We have. We're going to be covering the original film in the franchise, Predator.
All at once.
From 1987.
3, 2, 1. Get to the chopper.
Get to the chopper.
Yeah.
Brian didn't do it.
I didn't get the note.
I was shocked when I watched the movie. I forgot that line was in it, like genuinely, because it's like so beyond being part of a movie. It's just
memed into
something
infinity.
Arnold says that I was like, oh, that's
Get
right.
to the chopper.
That's where this started. But we're gonna talk all
What's
about
the matter? The CIA have you pushing too many pencils?
Oh, hey, man, hold your horses, Dylan. There's a guy at my work named Dylan, and yep, you bet your sweet ass every time I see him, I go, Dylan. You son of a bitch. God, it's infinitely quotable. So we're going to be talking all original Predator. I do recommend, if you haven't picked it up, you can get that 4K copy via get into our sweepstakes by commenting on our YouTube video and subscribing and commenting on any of the weekly uploads from August. You can definitely do that, but get in that fucking sweet 4K Blu-ray. It's a solid Blu-ray. Audio is a little hit or miss, but I clearly like they're editing it, but dude, the fucking picture, shit. Get on that Bluey. Very cool. Email us at popholicscast@gmail.com. Check out our weekly uploads. Rate us 5 stars.
He's talking about Blu-rays, folks. I guess this is clear. I don't know.
You don't
Not the children's show, Bluey.
You don't call them Blueys?
Australian children's show.
Oh, I can't wait to show my kid that. No, Blueys. Blu-rays. You don't say that? Is that only me? Did I make something up?
I think you made it up tonight, maybe.
Maybe. Very possible. Anyway, that's going to do it for this. Much more hunting, much more Predator to come on the next episode of